Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. So nice to see you all again. To our new users tuning in, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to talk to you guys a little bit more today about crushing your interviews and how you can do that, what that looks like from start to finish. We're so excited that you guys are all here. Make sure you guys drop where you're from in the comments. My name is Cheyenne. I'm the Chief of Staff here at Wonsulting. Wonsulting has a mission of turning underdogs into winners, and that includes helping you from applications, resumes, developing your network, all the way through making sure that you're a winner and land that dream job. So we're here to help, and we're so happy to have you all here today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm seeing some comments come on in. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. We have some great guest speakers here to talk with you all today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a second. Thank you guys so much for being here, everyone. We're so excited to have you. Hi from Virginia. Oh my goodness, you're so far. Hi. Alrighty, team. We're going to go ahead and start on some introductions, and then we will start going through questions. As we see the questions roll through, we will try to answer as many as we possibly can. In the meantime, while those questions do run through, we have some questions that we're going to talk to our interviewees about to kind of answer what we see as common Q&As and address those for you guys. And then anything specific or maybe you want us to expand on, let us know in the comments, okay? Sounds good, everybody. All right, let's get started with introductions. Yeah, full female panel. I love it. Alrighty, everybody. Jyoti, do you want to start us?
Yes, hi everyone. Happy Friday, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you guys are. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Shan and Wonsulting, for the opportunity and having a platform to share the information that we have and help you out with in your career journey. I'm Jyoti. I've been into product almost I don't remember how many years, but almost 12 to 15 years now. Started my career with Microsoft as a software developer, grew on to product management, been into product with different startups, small to medium, mid-sized organizations, specifically focused on insurance and security. And most recently, past 3.5 years, I've been with Meta, and right now I'm with Instagram. So much to learn, and the journey is exciting. Excited to help and share anything from my experience that would benefit the journey of everyone out here. And I'll popcorn it to Deepti.
Thanks, Jyoti. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. Thanks, Cheyenne, and Wonsulting again. I'm Deepti. I work for Meta as well. I'm a product TPM with Meta, FinTech. So we work on, my team works on Web3 and blockchain and some of those new age things. So it's exciting. I've been with Meta over 6 years. I started as a product manager in the enterprise engineering team. And then last 2 years, I've been with the Meta FinTech team. Before this, I was at Amazon. I was a product manager there as well. And like Jyoti, when I started my career as an engineer back in the day, worked with Microsoft and a few other companies there. So really excited to be here and share our experiences here as well. So I'll pass it on to Vidya.
Thanks, Deepti. Hey, everyone. Happy Friday. So my name is Vidya. I am also from Meta. So there's an all-women, all-Meta panel. Woot. I have been a product manager for over a decade. I started my career as a product manager, slightly different from Jyoti and Deepti. So I can share the perspective of what does it mean to start your career as a PM. And I think Jyoti and Deepti can talk about what does it mean to transition into product. So you have full coverage there. I joined Meta over an year something ago, but in the past I've worked on building products for the enterprise, for small business, and now consumers. Right now I work on safety and well-being for Messenger and Instagram. I also do a whole bunch of public speaking. So I've given over like 100 something talks on product management, careers in tech, and mostly how to thrive as a woman in tech. And I also do a lot of singing. So if you want to connect, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn because I do all my writing there, and Instagram because I do all my singing there. Back to you, Cheyenne.
I love it, team. Can we drop some clapping hands emojis in the comments for our panel? We're so excited. Hi from Denver, Texas, India, Virginia. Oh my goodness, there's people from all over the world in this chat. I'm so excited to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. Go ahead and start dropping your comments and your questions in the chat, and we'll start answering them as I see them come in. But just to start us off, everybody, I want to start with a pretty big question that we get all the time, which is going into interviews can feel really overwhelming. And one way that I'm trying to set myself up for success is to combat that feeling. How should I prepare for interviews to make me feel more ready and less overwhelmed?
I can go first, and then I'd love to hear from Vidya and Jyoti as well. So I actually also do a little bit of interview coaching on this side. One of the things I've seen helps a lot is doing mock interviews. You can do that with your peers. You can do it with professionals who can kind of guide you through the process. So that really helps. Remove some of that anxiety of and uncertainty of how your interview will go when you're rehearsing for it. Besides that, I think just taking it easy and being yourself is important. We're always trying to put up an image. We want to, of course, we want to present our best self, but understand that interview is a double-edged sword, right? Like the other person also needs, you need to interview the other person equally. It might not appear that way, but only if the chemistry works on both ends is it going to work out in the long term. So I'd say be yourself, and of course present your best self, but don't get too nervous or try to over project something that you might not be able to keep up later. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I'll plus one to what Deepthi said. See, it's very common that you have the nerves, you know, not just while interviewing, while you do something that you have not done enough number of times, and you're trying to like step out of your comfort zone. It's common to feel the nerves. Like when you go and suddenly start public speaking, you'll be nervous, right? But I think there's a couple of things that you can do to kind of like calm yourself down, right? One is definitely what Deepthi said, right? Doing enough number of mocks, because when you put yourself into the same process of doing an interview 20 times, and the 21st time should be relatively easier, right? So the tips that I usually give are, one is, irrespective of what your interview role is, like be it product or be it engineering, be it data, build your own frameworks. One common um, concern that I see when I interview is people try to retrofit into some framework that they have seen somewhere, right? Now, what happens because of that is my interviewing style, like in the way I interview or take interviews or give interviews, might be very different from what Jyoti does, for example, right? So when I take a framework that Jyoti built and try to force fit myself, I'm focusing more on the framework than what I'm saying. So it breaks my natural flow, right? So for product management, I always say there is no right or wrong framework, to be honest. As long as you're able to drive clarity and lead the conversation, that's what we look for, right? So build your own framework that maps to your natural conversation style, because in that way you focus on the content and not really, your brain is not thinking, did I cover step one, did I cover step two? You're not doing that. So you appear to be more confident, you have control over what you're speaking, right? So that's one. And the other thing that I would say is, if and now most people are doing virtual interviews, share your screen, because a lot of interviewers are very visual, right? So when you share your screen and you're not like looking down and writing on your pen and paper, there's an awkward pause. But when you share your screen, when you type, people can actually see, okay, that's what they're thinking, and sometimes they may even be able to cheer you, right? Or if something is interesting, I've had interviews where I've seen the other person. I in fact usually ask, like, do you want to share your screen so that I can see what you're thinking, right? And I see that they write something, and that's a lot more interesting to me than the original prompt that I started. So we completely segue the interview, right? So share your screen. That's why people used to always do whiteboarding when in-person interviews were a thing, right? So, but if you have an opportunity, definitely share your screen. Jyoti, what do you think?
Yeah, I think in addition to what Vidya and Deepthi have shared, I think there are two things. One, try to build the trust with the other person, irrespective of whatever job you are trying to apply for, whether it is product, TPM, or even for anyone. If somebody comes to you for asking for a role, you are going to give that job only to somebody who can build that trust with you. So there are many things, that is the underlying principle that I think definitely you should have in mind. So to be able to build that trust, there are multiple things that Vidya and Deepthi said that you can do. And second, Practice, practice, and practice. Depending on which organizations you're trying to apply for, they might have different strategies, different frameworks. Amazon has a different style, Meta has a different style, Google has a different style. Likewise, startups might have a different style. Get yourself familiar and accustomed to those styles. Carve out some time from your daily life. All of us are busy to invest. Like, for example, there are coaching that is available there. If you can afford that, try to invest some part of it there. If not, get onto LinkedIn and try to feel confident to seek help. Sometimes we are so very hesitant. I do that as well, interview coaching and all of that outside of my work. But I encourage them that the mistakes that I made, I was very shy and would not approach somebody who I didn't know for requesting their time without paying any fees. And I'm like, why would that person do that? But to my surprise, when I encourage candidates to do, they reach out to at least 10. Out of 10, at least 2 will respond out of the goodness and the time that they want to help. So do not limit yourself. And lastly, and not the least, I want to share that you need to practice, prepare, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world. There is always a second attempt that you can give. So many at different organizations, especially the top 5, have not made it in the first attempt. I don't know whether that information is available, but after 6 months, when you apply again after the preparation, you get to do it again. It's like a driving test. You didn't clear it at the first time. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. You get your license the second time. So keep at it, and definitely we'll pass it on to all the very best for all of you. To face that fear, overcoming that fear is the first step. I'll pass it on to Shen.
Oh, you're muted, Cheyenne.
Thanks, guys. I do that more oftentimes than I would like to admit. However, I was saying, thank you so much for that feedback. I think it's great. One of the things with Wonsulting that we get a lot of times is people come to us with that question saying, I've prepared, I've made my resume, I've networked, and now here I am getting ready to have this conversation that I should be so excited for because I've put in the work. And here come these nerves, and then I trip myself up, and now here I am after the interview or after the conversation thinking, wow, I did all that and it could have gone so much better. And my personal feedback to that is when it comes to new things, +1, you're going to be nervous. But what I think the thing to learn about that is and really reflect on is despite those nerves, it should tell you how excited you are for the position. People who care come in with nerves, and that's okay because you're working through them. And an interviewer who's invested in you and still invested in your conversation will take the time to notice that you have prepared and you might just be nervous, but they can do things on their end to kind of alleviate that stress as well. So be forthcoming with your interviewer, be forthcoming with your information, and just know that as time continues to go on, those nerves will subside and you'll have a great call. And who knows? I mean, sometimes people leave those interviews thinking that they totally bombed it and then get a call back saying, we'd love to have another chat. So don't count yourself out, guys. You're doing great. I see some questions starting to come in, but we'll wait a little bit more. What are some technical test interview online resources that you guys don't mind sharing for people interested in going into a PM, engineering, programming, etc. position? Anybody have some feedback there?
Yeah, I think one of the websites which I've shared with quite a few candidates and they tell me they found helpful is the educative.io, which is grokking system design. It's got a specific structure and dedicated work themes for engineers as well as for technical product management. For product management, there could be multiple other sites, like Try Exponent is one of them that I'm aware of, as well as I Got an Interview are others. But outside of that, there are also videos on YouTube by professionals. So these are some of them. Deepthi, Vidya, do you want to share any?
I would say for product management, don't focus too much on the response, but just look at the question and answer on your own. Like that's what I usually recommend because again, understand the basics. Product management is actually, it might seem very very ambiguous, but the whole purpose of the interview is to see, are you able to drive clarity and ambiguity? That is all. So the questions are very open ended. There's not really a right or a wrong answer. It's all about how are you able to supplement, how are you able to think through and arrive at where you've arrived, right? So I think Try Exponent is a good one. I got an offer, I think, and there's a whole bunch of PM resources. There's something like that, but just search for PM interview questions, take a few questions, time box yourself, Okay, don't spend like an hour trying to solve like a simple product sense question. Set 20-minute timer and see how you're thinking, see where your thought process goes through, and then look at some videos to see, okay, how did that person answer, what are some things, tips that you can pick up from that person, right? And then try to see, try to arrive at, again, as I said in the previous question, build your own framework, build your own approach on, okay, I'm first going to size the opportunity, then I'm going to go into the customer segment, then I'm going to look at prioritization framework. Like, build your own flow so that you're able to mimic that for any question.
Yeah, I think Vidya and Jyoti covered most of it. Definitely recommend trying to see how you'd answer the question yourself, but also maybe referencing some videos for technical. I know besides grokking system, there's also one more, and I know people use Stack Overflow a lot, and there are some videos on YouTube for system design questions, especially for product TPM. We do index on system design a lot. We have 2 technical rounds, so that'll be super helpful for you to watch some of those videos. How is Uber design, how's Facebook design, so it helps you get the overall high level system architecture of all products.
Love it, team. I also think to plus one off of this whole segment of this question is I think people oftentimes get hung up on the common theme that people tell people, which is like use the car format or the star format when you're answering an interview question. And that's where, I mean, those are great resources. I'm not knocking the format. What I am saying is to plus one, what Vidya said, if you are so stuck on going through, okay, well, I need to answer S and then I need to answer T and A and R, it's not going to be a natural flow. And an interviewer is going to peg you off the bat of just making sure you're hitting these marks. But if you go through and find ways to incorporate in your natural flow the answers to those questions already, you're going to get a plus one for being able to answer the questions they haven't even asked yet, but also it shows your thought process. Yeah. And really in any field, in any interview, the goal is to understand how you think, because they want to know, would that thought process and the way you approach conflict, new ideas, whatever that situation is, how does that work into their team and what value add does that bring? So just remember that those are great things to work on, and maybe you think about how you would answer each of those formats individually, but then find ways to incorporate those answers into your natural flow, and you'll definitely see a better result. We have some other questions.
That, related to what you said, Cheyenne, like one tip I can give is, I do these things called stress interviews.
Yeah.
Where, I've done, when I was interviewing, I've been on the receiving end, and I do quite a few when people reach out, but I do stress interviews. And stress interviews are where I am this very rigid interviewer, and I try to stress you out. I literally try to stress you out. Right? It's very similar to the stress test that we do, right, in the product. So in that case, where when you come up with a framework like a STAR, nothing wrong with the STAR framework. It's a fantastic framework, but we try to purposefully segue you from that. I try to ask you something that's going to throw you off your framework, and then we see, okay, how are you answering that, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, start with something, but let it evolve. Don't hold it so rigidly. And a lot of people, when I see, they hold their framework so rigid that they try to retrofit the question into the framework, and that's a big red flag. Because that shows that you're not able to operate, think freely, think beyond the box that you've created for yourself, right?
100%.
So definitely do, if you're doing 5 mocks, make sure at least one of them is a stress mock.
That's a really great tip. And I think to plus on what you just said to that too is like the adaptability sector of every person, every interview, and also every field, right? People are looking for that. And your interview is honestly one of the first key moments of insights into how you adapt. And a lot of that comes from interview questions and interview structure and style. So make sure you guys, like we said, just do what's authentic to you and answer how you feel you need to, but you're better off going in well prepared instead of well rehearsed. And I think there's a very big difference there. So how to answer why you want to change into this new role in a short way without explaining too much. Do you guys have any feedback on like a good maybe structure or style that people could kind of reference to answer this question?
Yeah, I can share some tips that helped me because I had multiple roles across my journey, but I wasn't very much focused on that. So the interview will see what the candidate wants to show. That's all they know about whatever the candidate is trying to share. So keeping that principle behind mind, like if I'm a candidate and I'm appearing for an interview, the interviewer only what I will focus their attention is where they will also get dragged onto. So it's important for me to be first of all clear what I want to communicate. So internally amongst myself in my head, I want to know what am I trying to do with my career, where am I headed, what is my current status, and why do I think I'm a good fit for this next step. Once I've done that homework internally, I've sorted those out, the strengths that I bring to the table, I think that is where I want the interviewer to focus on. And that's what I would encourage everyone to do. Identify your strengths for the new role, how you are able to bring your skills from the previous role as a value add to the new role, and make sure that the interviewer understands that. Try to work on your communication in such a way that that is the focus. So unless there are follow up questions, it will be you would have already done that homework with yourself and your career, and each career path is different, so you can accordingly use that. Typically, for example, I can take next 10 seconds to quickly share. Like I have a degree in education as well. As part of my growing career, I wanted to learn psychology and sociology, and I grew up in India where that was the only course which was helping me do that outside of the sciences and engineering. And I got into some kind of assignments in IT where we were building portals for education, and I could use that domain knowledge there. So when I was trying to apply for jobs and any kind of assignments, I brought that as a value add, and I connected how my previous experience or degree is going to be helpful for that new role. So likewise, take some time to investigate what your strengths are and how that is going to be beneficial for the new role. And you don't have to explain a lot. If you are confident and clear about what you are trying to do and achieve, the same will get conveyed to the interviewer. I'll pass it on to Vidya and Dipti.
I really love that. I love that, focus on the strengths and try to kind of, draw the interviewer into the strengths and have the discussion. And here's the thing, right? Like if you in fact wanted to go and work for a big company, you can just tell that. Like you don't have to again craft a very fancy dialogue. You can just say, "Hey, I've always wanted to work for a big company." That's what I told when I started as, with my internship at Microsoft, and legit I was fascinated from my childhood on how does this company build, or any big company. And my first, computer was a PC, and I was like, how is this built? Like I was genuinely curious. So when I went to the Redmond office for my internship interview, I was like, even before the interview started, the first thing I'm like, can you show me like how some of these things? I was so naive back then, but I was like, I was like, can you just show me? Like I am genuinely curious to see how teams work. And they actually did a cute tour of one of these buildings, and my mind was just blown because that was I was genuinely curious, right? So let your natural curiosity shine, right? If you always want to work like Meta, just tell them, hey, I want to know what's happening behind the scenes. I am genuinely curious. I like that, and I want to learn more. So let your natural curiosity shine. Like you don't have to come up with like a super polished, words picked from the thesaurus answer for this, to be honest. So combine your natural curiosity, identify the strengths as Jyoti mentioned, and you should be able to come up with a realistic response, of why you are interested in that company.
Totally plus one on that. So I would say, just to add to everything that Jyoti and Vidya said, understand what the role in the company are, and then let your real enthusiasm shine. So if in the process of understanding what the company does, if you feel like you're not really interested, then I know it's a, it's a hard call, but you don't have to appear like you need this job, right? Like you don't have to prepare and make it sound like you do. You be honest, and your innate interest in the company and the role and the curiosity will come through. And most interviewers, especially if they're seasoned, they can see through if you're like faking it or not. So might as well not attempt and just be honest and save each other time as well.
And one,
100%.
one point there is things that I think the question was, what do you say? I'll tell you things that you should not be saying. Don't say that you're just coming for the money. Okay, like just don't say that. Like because if somebody else is going to offer you more money, then I don't know if you're going to be invested in my team, right? So money is important, pay is important, but let's not make that the central point of discussion of, hey, I'm coming in because you guys have a more base pack, higher base package than XYZ. Don't say that. And secondly, don't also make it seem that you're going to jump after a year. The cost of interviewing, the cost of training you, the cost of onboarding is pretty high. Like when anybody interviews, they want to invest in you, they want you to be a value add to the team. So don't make it seem like yeah, it's more of a transitional thing. I'm going to jump. Whether you jump or not, that's a completely different conversation, right? But don't make it seem like, yeah, I'm just here for an year, I'm going to check out after an year, because don't have those discussions. It draws in a lot of negative energy and unnecessary discussions, I would say.
100%, especially if, you know, you're going into big tech, then people say like, oh, you're just here for the name, or you're just here for that name for the year so that way you can go on to something else. It's totally okay if, you know, you make a transition so that way it can better align with your long-term goals. That's definitely 100% okay. And maybe after a year or 2 years, you realize that that's not, you know, the exact step that you thought it would be, and that's okay. But if you go into it with this idea like, I'm going in for a year so I can get Meta on my resume, and then I'm going to go to TikTok, and then I'm going to go here, like, you're going to get noticed by these companies and by these recruiters, and for the wrong reasons, right? The transitional period is acceptable, but if you're doing it specifically to job hop in a negative way, then it can impact you, and there's no point in putting yourself at a lower chance of being, you know, received highly in these other industries and with these other companies. Just focus on what you know is good for yourself, and maybe spend that extra time to find the company that you really do align with the most, from an exterior standpoint. And then once you get in or get the chance to interview, you can see if those, you know, expectations do align there. Perfect. Okay, so we have another question, and it says, can you provide some insight over the process of transitioning into a career of product management from a different profile? I have similarities in terms of things that I think would cross over and show that I should work in this industry, but I'm not quite sure how to explain those transitional skills across the different fields.
Yeah, I can get started. I've transitioned into multiple roles in and out of product, and so I started as an engineer. The main reason you would want to become a PM is if you like working with people and solving problems, people problems, versus as an engineer you're more focused on, you know, getting this code optimized, or, you know, solving a problem through a very specific problem, versus as a PM you would be looking at it from a broader perspective. So that would be so your focus shifts. Instead of, you know, going deep into how you want to solve a problem, you're looking at, okay, what are the gaps, how do I best address this through a product or something like that. So that is the mindset shift in from, you know, being an engineer to being a PM. And if you can somehow show that you're ready for it, if you're applying for a new role, then maybe you might, even if you haven't done that role in your current job, pick up some side projects and say that, yeah, I helped do this, I created this product as a side project or something like that, and come up with insights. Or you can uh, you know, analyze existing products and see what you could do better there. So always try to put on your PM hat wherever possible, and play that role, and that will definitely help you transition over to the other role as well, besides the interview prep and all of that stuff.
I love that. And this is a question that I get asked probably 5 times a week. So I'll tell you this. Product management is a fascinating role. It's an amazing role. But when I ask, the first question I ask somebody when they say I want to transition is, why do you want to transition? And if the answer is I don't like writing code, that is a wrong reason. You should not be transitioning to PM because you don't like the thing that you're doing right now. Because product management requires, being a good, really like great PM requires a lot of core skills, and it's not for everybody. Just like how, you know, software development is not for everybody, design is not for everybody, right? So I would say try to really understand, why do you want to transition? Like, what about this role do you not like? What about the other role do you really like? And then bridge, right? And then really understand. And again, there's product management, there's product TPM, there's TPM, there's project manager, there's program manager. They all might sound very similar, but they have some overlaps, but they also have a lot of differences. Like, really try to understand. Like, when I ask people like, okay, what do you think a product manager is? They're like, oh, they set up meetings and they do project management. Like, that's not a product manager, right? So really, like, understand, take time to understand. There's like plethora of blogs online, right? Or attend like a PM talk, right? And then try to understand, what is like the crux of being a really good product manager? What do they do? Or similarly, what is the crux of being a really good product TPM, right? What is the crux of being a really good TPM? So understand the nuances of these roles, and then try to reflect on what in your current role have you done that can actually supplement this requirement, right? So then try to start, bridging the gaps, because you don't, a lot of people transition, right? And you will have your own strengths, right? As you bring, when you're going from, a SDE to a PM, you come with a whole bunch of strengths, and you also come with probably like a few gaps that you can obviously learn on the job, right? So be really clear on why are you leaving this current role, what about the new role do you like, and what's the gap, and what are the skill sets that you're bringing with yourself, right? If you have this clarity, the other things don't really matter. Jyoti, what do you think? Because I know you also transitioned.
Yeah, I would. I really love Vidya, you and Deepti, what you both shared. And like I mentioned, each one's journey of you who is watching this video would be different. So, what is it that you really like about being a product manager? Also, no two product managers do exactly the same thing. Though there are core principles of solving the pain points of customers and working end to end, my reason for joining product management would be different from what somebody else's reason would be. So, that has to click. You have to basically be happy about doing that job or core role. There are two ways which had worked for me. Basically, in the current organization, I was already doing it in Microsoft before realizing it. So Microsoft does not have product managers, or did not have when I was there. They had program managers as a title, which was very similar to what we do at Meta is product management. And I was already doing a lot of that, and I got transitioned into that directly, like talking to the business stakeholders, understanding their pain points, taking it back to engineering, and then trying to build it in small chunks, planning for it, measuring it, and then again taking it back to customers. So I love doing the end-to-end complete piece, like talking to customers, getting back to eng, helping them technically, and then so it's I love that, and I continued, and that's when my manager said, "Hey, this is what is program management here. Why don't you transition there?" And I'm like, "All right, if it's something that I was already doing." So some of you might be already doing that. Try to find out whether you are doing that or not. If you're interested, maybe there are opportunities of product managers in your current organization. Discuss frankly with your manager and them that if you want to transition the next 6 months or 1 year, are there opportunities you can shadow that product manager or help them out in smaller projects and what they are trying to do, and gradually build that muscle. There are also courses externally, like Deepti and Vidya mentioned, where, for example, you can understand more, like attend those talks, build your network, and gradually there would be like some openings coming up where you can say, "Hey, now I'm confident, I have done a bit of this." And gradually, so all of us, I think, grew gradually. It didn't happen overnight. All of us came from different backgrounds, and some of you, of course, can directly get into product and start building, but the experience will take time to build. So be kind to yourself and take opportunities internally or externally, paid or unpaid. It really doesn't matter if you have a core job and then you take an unpaid one, to add that experience, and then see whether you like it or not, and then continue in that.
Love it. Someone said in a question, when you're trying to switch into a PM role, would a PMP certification help? And I think I'll just start off with a +1 here, because I think in any role that you're trying to get into, right, like having some form of, whether that's a certification, extra side jobs, a background in it, just having some kind of knowledge will definitely help showcase your ability and readiness for a role. But not always are they 100% necessary. I'm not a PM, so I won't speak directly to a PMP. I'll let you guys speak to it. But I will say, because there are a ton of people across different roles in here, when it comes to interviewing, make sure to showcase those skills that you've worked hard to develop, right? Like if that's through certifications or extra classes or extra side work that you've done, showcase that hard work. It tells people that aside from, maybe your regular 9 to 5, you're putting in the extra hours on your own time to learn and become a master in whatever it is that you're going for.
Yeah, I would definitely pile on that. I don't look for certifications at all in a resume that I screen. I don't talk about certifications in the interviews that I take. What I do talk about, what catches my eye is you going above and beyond your regular role and then trying to build a product or trying to, come up with an alternate design for something that you use or trying to form a club, trying to lead a club, right? Even if you're a student, I always say, hey, if you're like, leading clubs, doing some side hustles, put that on the resume because those things are important. As a PM, you talk to a lot of people. You are constantly trying to load balance. You're constantly trying to resolve conflicts. You're constantly trying to balance emotions. These require a sense of maturity, right? And you going and leading that student body club is actually a good experience. That I will value that more than some certification that you did, right? So, and similarly, if you have a website, if you built your own website, drop that link there because I want to go and see how you're thinking through, right? What goes above the fold, what goes below the fold. I actually click on pretty much all the links that are in the resumes because I want to go and see how you guys build, right? So these things are actually give you a flair for how you would think through product design than a certification that might not be familiar to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Awesome.
totally +1 on that. Also, PMP is more project management than product. So I don't think it would be relevant at all if you want to become a product manager. But I think it's probably Scrum Master or roles like that. It might be more relevant too. So I know Deloitte and some consulting companies value PMP. So it depends on what your target companies are. If you're looking at product companies like Meta, Google, I don't think we value certifications as much as we do real experience, or like real world chops, like what you've done in your side hustle or any of that would definitely carry more weight.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Jyoti, do you have anything you wanted to add on that one?
I think certification definitely, if you want to understand through an academic course, if that is your understanding, like for your own self and own knowledge, if you want to do like how, what are the project management phases when you are managing a project, because as a product manager, you definitely will be doing some kind of project management as well as a subset, but you don't do only project management. So just for your own knowledge and curiosity, if you want to do, yes, you can, that would be helpful. But for the interview process, perhaps not. Like I've been interviewing for a while now, and I haven't ever seen, like, candidates definitely reflect that on the resume. It's good to know as a factual information, but beyond that, I've never seen any kind of added benefit. But if you want to just understand, if you have never done project management and you want to know, like, hey, what is project management, what are the principles, how do you manage different phases, um, great. You want to go ahead and certify. Like I used to do that when I was new to engineering, and I wanted to understand, grow from VB SQL procedural languages to object oriented. It was very new, so I went ahead and certified myself and became a Microsoft certified professional in .NET. But why? Because I didn't have that knowledge. I wanted to give myself that rigor and go through the examination and get it. Did I get a job just because of that, or did it add value? I don't really know. If I can't do coding even with that certification, I don't think it's of added value. If I can do coding without that certification, and if there are like hundreds of candidates, perhaps of value. So it's a very relative one, but for product, like the Vidya and Deepti shared, it might not be really beneficial. The other exercise, if you invest time there, like strengthening the muscle of product management, that might help you.
Perfect. I love it. Someone else asked a question and they said, how do you tackle a scenario when you're currently freelancing and during an interview they ask you about stopping that once you became a full-time hire? How do you approach that conversation and what does that look like?
I mean, I think it's straightforward, right? If it's conflicting with the company's products, then you have to pick one, right? But if it's not, if it's non-conflicting, then a lot of companies, including startups, I would say, have some sort of moonlighting policy, right? They do have some sort of moonlighting policy where you can use you use your credentials with that company, or you can use your role in that company while you're doing, or sometimes they say, okay, you can do whatever you want as long as it's not conflicting and it's not operating in this domain, but you should not be using your relevance to our company. You should operate as an individual, right? So I would say, don't bring that up in your interviews. Like, that's not the time where you discuss, can I still do my thing and earn my this side hustle money? When no, that's not the right time. I think you can talk to this when they say that you have an offer on hand. Talk to your recruiter about, hey, I do these things. Can I understand more about your, moonlighting policy? Can I understand more about, your approvals that I have to take? Right, and also prove, they may ask for some paperwork and stuff to understand that it's actually not conflicting, but sometimes if it is, then you'll have to pick. It's a hard choice, right? But interview is not the place to discuss about your freelancing gig, to be honest.
Perfect. Okay. Go ahead, Diti.
uh, no, I just unmuted for the next question. I think
Oh,
we
okay.
covered it
No
all.
problem. Alrighty. So someone else said, how can a non-tech academic aspirant find careers in a software industry?
uh, I can give my 2 cents. Although I don't know if I'm the right person, and all of us come from tech backgrounds, I guess. But there are a lot of roles in the software industry that do not, that are not very tech focused. So depends on what you want to do in tech. Like even at Meta, we have like hundreds of XFN, as we call them, cross-functional roles, that are this roles in finance, roles in legal if you have that background. If you're, it depends on what your academic. I know I've worked with people that have also been that are product managers now, that were musicians or something in the past. So it's definitely doable if you have the right mindset and you've kind of prepared for it, and you can sell that in your interview that you can do this job. There's also a role called RPM at Facebook, at Meta, that is specifically designed for this, to help people that are from non-tech, non-PM backgrounds to enter, because Meta especially encourages diverse perspectives in product roles. So that might be another role that you could prepare for and consider as well.
Love it.
I was going to pile on the same the RPM role. I think even for other roles, you have rotational opportunities, like in a lot of these companies,
Yeah.
right? So if you're coming from a non-tech background, you don't need to have core. I mean, you need to have an understanding of the tech, but you don't need to like study computers, and that's not the only way to kind of break into tech. To be honest, as long as you're able to kind of understand, okay, what goes on behind the scenes, and you're able to have an intelligent conversation with whoever it is that you're building with, that should do. Like I've known environmental engineers who start their careers as product managers. So it's possible. It's not really a hard requirement. But Deepti, I think mentioned a really good point of just trying it out, right? And seeing, and there are a lot of companies who do rotational roles. A lot of them do internships. Internships are a phenomenal way to kind of get a flair for the role, and also see 3 months is good enough time for you to understand whether you like it, don't like it, good at it, not good at it, right? So definitely, break into one of these RPM or rotational roles, and or internships or apprentice, co-op roles, whatever it is that is being offered in your company of your choice, and then see if you like it, and then you can make a decision on whether you want to commit to it more than that.
I also want to add just some factual information that I've observed in the past few years to what Vidya and Deepti shared. There are so many senior product leaders who do not come from a tech background. Um, Without naming any of them, but if you just take a look at even the top organizations, the top leaders, some of them have a history background, some of them have an English background. These are all non-technical courses, and they are now head of products. So they grew, like the skills are transferable. So the TLDR or the message that I'm trying to get to each one of you there is that whatever you're doing is valuable in some way or the other in your journey. And so do not have that limitations in your mind that just because I'm from a non-tech, it's easier for a tech to get in and a non-tech not to get in. There are so many who are from a non-tech background, some of you, and who have made it not just to PM but head of products, right? So that should not be a limiting factor in your mind.
Love it. Perfect. Okay, so I think a question that pops into my mind just thinking about common Q&As, then we'll go back to our chat Q&As, is kind of centering back on interview sections. When it comes to preparing for interviews, we talk a lot about mock and looking up interview questions and practicing, but I think something to consider as well, right, is what does preparation look like in terms of different interview styles? Is it different when you're preparing for a panel interview versus a one-on-one? If so, what do those steps look like, and what do you guys think is the best way to go about preparing for them?
I'll give you my 2 cents. My take is that it's not really the format of the interview, it's more the focus of the interview, right? Like irrespective of whether it's 5 people interviewing me or one person talking to me, if you're talking about a case study about a product sense question, my approach is probably going to be the same. The only thing that might differ is instead of me fixating on one person, I might fixate on like 4 or 5 people, right? So I would say, focus, like get really clear on the focus of the interview. If it's a product sense interview, let's take for example, why are we having this? Like I think as long as you understand why is this interview in place, what skills is the other person trying to gauge, the format really shouldn't matter. Like similarly, when you take execution, right? Okay, it's all about trying to see how you use data to make decisions. Okay, that's all you need to understand, right? Then break it down, right? So and then leadership question, like if let's say the focus is conflict resolution, then you need to understand, okay, what are they trying to get to, right? So I would say, at least based on the way I've approached, I focus more on what is the crux of the interview, and not so much on the format of the interview. The formatting definitely, it does play in, just to make sure that you're able to communicate with all of them, right? If there's a writing portion or if there's a presentation portion, right? Just making sure that you're addressing questions, you're time balance, managing your time effectively, because there's 4 people and you need to make sure that you give everyone an option to kind of ask you questions. Like, these nuances definitely come into play, right? But not the core, content itself of your interview.
Any other plus ones on that?
Yeah, I can definitely add to that. So it really depends on a panel, whether versus panel is multiple people, and the setting, whether it's virtual or in person. So it's important to understand that setting just so that you are accustomed to that. If it's going to be online, then you want to make sure that you're comfortable talking to 4 people at a time or 3, whoever is in the panel, and be aware of the structure. Are they going to ask you different set of questions and stuff like that? So your recruiter is your best person to reach out to and clarify all of that. So before the interview, definitely whatever questions you have regarding the format, what is expected. Generally, some organizations also share the questions, like type of questions that the structure is going to be focused on. So you should ask these questions to the recruiter, because sometimes they share, sometimes they might as you ask. So definitely do that. If it's one-on-one, you definitely know the drill. It's about different organization, what is the role, what are their expectations. And if it is going to be a panel, you want to address. And one thing I would say is a red flag is not to answer a question or to derail the question. So for example, if in the panel somebody has asked you a question and if you don't know the answer, I find it's a healthy practice to honestly say that, hey, I don't know this, but I know something else about it, and then take it. Are you okay with it? So take that acknowledgement from the interviewer and then go to the next one, rather than continuing in the panel. Like, they are shooting questions at you and they also want you to be successful. They are investing time to make sure that they get a good hire. So it's not that the panel is there to not take you in. They want to get you in, but at the same time you need to work with them. If you don't know an answer to a question, be honest, tell them, and then divert to the next one. So just practice and be familiar with what is expected out there.
Yeah. Actually, I have never done a panel interview, and I was just like trying to think back to see if there was a. So most tech companies do one-on-ones. It's very rare that you have multiple people, but again, that might just be the companies that I've interviewed with or for. I think usually if there's a panel, it's because there's like 3-4 people with multiple focus areas that want to kind of all be in the same room and gauge you from different angles, right? So they're not usually asking you, they're looking at different signals each person looks at. So there might be one that's, say, in the upper management, or one that would be a cross functional partner that will work with you, and one would be the hiring. So that might be the reason there's a panel set up instead of individual interviews, and they all want to kind of weigh in. So keep that in mind. And even though there's like 5 people, when you're answering question, make sure that you make the panelists feel like you're doing a one-on-one interview. So that way your full focus would be on the person that you're responding to, so that you don't like make any of them feel unheard. Like Jyoti said, like, don't skip answers and stuff like that. Some of those are like tactical observations or advice, but usually understand what your panel is comprised of, and understand, and maybe like get some inputs maybe from your recruiter as well, like what are the signals that different people are looking for. That will help you tailor your answers correctly, so that you can help them get whatever answers they're looking for, in the sense that, say, there's one technical person in the panel and there's one non-technical, then depending on what the question is, you might want to cater your answers to suit the panelists focus areas as well.
Love it. I think that that's really great feedback. And I will say plus one for something from Wonsulting side is we think that it's super important to communicate with that recruiter, that hiring manager beforehand, right? So if you can ask them questions or you have personal connection to their email and you can send them an email, do so. Let them know, say, hey, I'd love to come to this interview best prepared. Is there any questions you'd like me to prepare beforehand? Or is there anything you'd like me to do to come in and be, most prepared? And they might share with you in those moments, whether it's going to be a panel if they hadn't said it before, or plus one to them sharing interview questions with you, or very, very similar interview questions with you. And you will be surprised. In my career, I have never been afraid to ask, simply because if you don't ask, you don't know. And more times than not, people are very willing to share with you. And this is from tech, non-tech backgrounds. When I started my career, I wasn't quite sure if tech was the forever home for me. And so I started in a different industry, and through transparency to you guys, marketing gave me a different insight into understanding how it is that you can still be open and communicative through every single industry, and that transparency is going to get you really far. So communicate with the people that are hiring you, communicate with the people that are interviewing you. At the end of the day, they're there to vouch for you, right? So go into your interview and communicate with your interviewers the way that you hope that they would communicate with you back, because that receptive communication is going to get you a lot farther than not ever asking and trying to go in just saying, well, I'm prepared, I know I'm going to do this right and I'm going to kill it. Yeah, you probably are, but also give yourself the edge up if you can. So we have about time for maybe one or two more questions. Someone said, is there a proper way to address a job gap in an interview?
I can start. So I'll be honest. The industry as a whole, like the tech industry, I think even most industries need to catch up on being okay with career breaks. And I hear this a lot, especially from moms who've taken career breaks and are struggling to get back because of career break. I think we are slowly starting to normalize, especially with pandemic and everything that the world has gone through in the past 3 years. People are like, yeah, of course it's okay to have a career break, but I think the industry as a whole, not just one employer, but the industry as a whole needs to kind of catch up and be okay with the career break. So some tactical tips that I've would have worked as one, be really clear on why you've taken the career break. I mean, if it's to care for a family, just say, yeah, I was caring for a family, like, or if you were traveling, then yeah, like just say that you traveled. But one thing I would say is try to show if there are anything that is relevant to the position that you're applying that you've done in the past 1 year. Let's say if you're freelanced, for example, or you've volunteered with a nonprofit and built their website, and put that on your resume saying, hey, yeah, you took a career break, and then but you were doing X, Y, and Z. Or if you were exploring being a creator, then just say, yeah, I learned X, Y, and Z. I went from X to Y reach, or I've helped this company with their social media marketing, or whatever it is, right? So just try to show that, because this shows that even when you're on a break, you are still picking up some skills that's relevant to the position, right? And the other thing is, don't try to beat around the bush. Like I've seen sometimes people say, they don't add months, for example, and then try to cover up the career break, right? But companies do background checks, so you don't want to kind of try to portray something that is not true, right? So don't try to kind of try to work around that in your resume by not putting months, and then trying to cover up the career break and all of that stuff, because every company I think does some sort of background check, and these things will be highlighted. So you don't want to come across as somebody who's not authentic. That's a bigger red flag than just having a career break, to be honest. And even LinkedIn, for example, just added the career break option, right? So I think we are slowly getting there, but in my personal opinion, we still have miles to go.
I would definitely agree with Vidya. It is a fact, based on my experience, that though we say on the face of it that, hey, gaps is okay, but when it comes to recruiting, everyone is giving more weightage to experience, and the gaps definitely sometimes get overlooked, um, in versus the experience. With that, one has to acknowledge it and know the best way based on your capacity and your experience how you are going to bridge it. Where are you applying? Which companies are more sensitive to this versus not? Not every company has an appetite for it, though they might say at the face of it. But that is one thing. So you have to acknowledge, yes, that is a pain point. So for all of you who are going through those experiences where you have gaps, that is the fact around. Acknowledge it, but at the same time, all is not lost. There are roles, so many roles which need your expertise. How to make it there? There could be different ways. Socialize, have a network. There are so many. I had taken a career break as well for similar reasons, like Vidya mentioned, and I had to go through sometimes a short or a quick one, or I went into startups, different organizations. I got senior roles. So there are multiple ways. Like the top companies are not the only companies in the globe. There are multiple different ways to get a break in, and all the employees who are outside of those top companies are doing great work as well. So definitely, you want to understand where you are breaking in, what you are trying to do, and who can see that worth in you. You want to work with a manager who understands who you are and not what you don't have. Second thing I will definitely say what helps is I went through a couple of interviews where, because I was focusing that, hey, I have a break, I was focusing on that. Oh, maybe this person is going to ask now. Now that question is coming. Now they're going to ask me, why the break? What did you do? And then that's going to take my end. I had to work on my mind and say, hey, this is my fact. What do I want to do now? I want to do that next role. What do I bring to the table? So again, getting back to the same message, get your interviewer to where you want that interviewer to be. You want to focus on your strengths on that role and get that job and convince that interviewer that yes, that interview can build trust and you are the right person to do the job. Focus on that. If they ask, give the honest thing and move on. Move on to your main thing. They may ask, they may not ask. Do not have your mind play games with you during the interview on that. So prep for that, be ready and move on to the next. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, move on to your next role. There are so many different organizations and roles where you will get your right fit. So do not give up.
I think Vidya and Jyoti covered everything that needed to be said here. So, yeah, I think career breaks are okay as long as you bring something to the table that's unique. Sometimes people take a break, travel the world, and they come back better with better perspective, right? Like I've worked with so many PMs at Meta actually that have taken breaks, a year sabbatical. They went to the Himalayas or whatever, and they went everywhere, and they came back with a renewed perspective. So it can actually work in your favor if you can, bring up, you can explain how you actually changed as a person or grew as a person as well.
100%. And I think that is going to be our last question since we only have about 2 minutes left, everyone. But I did want to say one final comment on that is I think Deepti hit it right on the head for me, which is experiences outside of work can be just as vital in playing major roles in the work that you do every day, right? Across every industry. And if you did take time for yourself, whether that was to raise a family, whether that was to travel, even if maybe you didn't necessarily have a hands-on project that you worked on while you were away, if you came back with new perspectives or learning about a different culture taught you a different way to approach a problem or approach people, or you saw a system in place somewhere else that you really loved, and so you dove into it during your time there to better understand and can now bring that insight into a team, into a company that maybe doesn't have the hands-on information because maybe they haven't been there, they don't have anyone that's been there. You add value in what you're doing, you add value in the experiences that you bring, because when a company invests in you, they're investing in you as yourself, you're investing in you as your brand, but they're also investing in you and what you bring to the table, all of you, including those breaks. And don't let that be your defining moment. Define that moment for your interviewer and move past it. Because if you let that be your catch, then moving forward, you will always be hung up on it. And instead of letting that be your, what's something you can work at, let it be the thing that worked for you. So again, thank you so much, everyone. We're so excited to have you. We're so appreciative that you decided to spend your hour of your time with us. And thank you so much to my panelists. I couldn't have done this without you guys. I know our audience is so grateful for all of you. And your backgrounds are amazing. You gave some great tips. And I think more than ever, our audience knows how to handle not only just their specific interview struggles and hurdles, but also generalized ones and maybe ones that are more common that people just give these basic answers to, and you guys kind of shined a light from an internal perspective on how to handle those in different ways. So I'm appreciative of all of you who joined in today, including our panelists, and Wonsulting couldn't be more grateful for everything that you guys do for us. Feel free to connect with all of us on LinkedIn. We're specifically me too. I'm happy to connect and happy to see where we can help. Again, thank you so much. And I hope you guys just have a really great Friday and an even better weekend. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for having us. This was, amazing. It was a great conversation. And like Cheyenne said, feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect and help.
Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Bye, you
Thanks. All the
guys.
best, everyone. Thanks, Shane.
Bye.